March is probably the most uncomfortable month in the hills. The rain is cold, often accompanied by sleet and hail, and the wind from the north comes tearing down the mountain passes with tremendous force. Those few people who pass the winter in the hill station remain close to their fires. If they can't afford fires, they get into bed. I found old Miss Mackenzie tucked up in bed with 3 hot water bottles for company. I took the bedroom's single easy chair, and for some time Miss Mackenzie and I listened to the thunder and watched the play of lightning. The rain made a tremendous noise on the corrugated tin roof, and we had to raise our voices in order to be heard. The hills looked blurred and smudgy when seen through the rain-spattered windows. The wind battered at the doors and rushed round the cottage, determined to make an entry. It slipped down the chimney, but stuck there choking and gurgling and protesting helplessly. "There is a ghost in your chimney and he can't get out," I said. "Then let him stay there," said Miss Mackenzie. A vivid flash of lightning lit up the opposite hill, showing me for a moment a pile of ruins which I never knew were there. "You're looking at Burnt Hill," said Miss Mackenzie. "It always gets the lightning when there's a storm." "Possibly there are iron deposits in the rocks," I said. "I wouldn't know. But it's the reason why no one ever lived there for long. Almost every dwelling that was put up was struck by lightning and burnt down. I thought I saw some ruins just now. Nothing but rubble." When they were first settling in the hills, they chose that spot. Later they moved to the site where the town now stands. Burnt Hill was left to the deer and the leopards and the monkeys, and to its ghosts, of course. "Oh, so it's haunted, too." "So they say. On evenings such as these." "But you don't believe in ghosts, do you?" "No." "Do you?" "No. But you'll understand why they say the hill is haunted when you hear its story. Listen." I listened, but at first I could hear nothing but the wind and the rain. Then Miss Mackenzie's clear voice rose above the sound of the elements, and I heard her saying, "It's really the old story of ill-starred lovers, only it's true. I'd met Robert at his parents' house some weeks before the tragedy took place. He was 18, tall and fresh-looking, and full of manhood. He'd been born out here, but his parents were hoping to return to England when Robert's father retired. His father was a magistrate, I think, but that hasn't any bearing on the story. Their plans didn't work out the way they expected. You see, Robert fell in love. Not with an English girl, mind you, but with a hill girl, the daughter of a landholder from the village behind Burnt Hill. Even today it would be unconventional. 25 years ago, it was almost unheard of. Robert liked walking, and he was hiking through the forest when he saw, or rather heard her. It was said later that he fell in love with her voice. She was singing, and the song, low and sweet and strange to his ears, struck him to the heart. When he caught sight of the girl's face, he was not disappointed. She was young and beautiful. She saw him and returned his awestruck gaze with a brief, fleeting smile. Robert, in his impetuousness, made enquiries at the village, located the girl's father, and without much ado asked for her hand in marriage. He probably thought that a sahib would not be refused such a request. At the same time, it was really quite gallant on his part, because any other young man might simply have ravished the girl in the forest. But Robert was in love, and, therefore, completely irrational in his behavior. Of course, the girl's father would have nothing to do with the proposal. He was a Brahman, and he wasn't going to have the good name of his family ruined by marrying off his only daughter to a foreigner. Robert did not argue with the father, nor did he say anything to his own parents, because he knew their reaction would be one of shock and dismay. They would do everything in their power to put an end to his madness. But Robert continued to visit the forest. You see it there, that heavy patch of oak and pine, and he often came across the girl, for she would be gathering fodder or fuel. She did not seem to resent his attentions, and, as Robert knew something of the language, he was soon able to convey his feelings to her. The girl must at first have been rather alarmed, but the boy's sincerity broke down her reserve. After all, she was young too, young enough to fall in love with a devoted swain, without thinking too much of his background. She knew her father would never agree to a marriage, and he knew his parents would prevent anything like that happening. So they planned to run away together. Romantic, isn't it? But it did happen. Only they did not live happily ever after. Did their parents come after them? No. They had agreed to meet one night in the ruined building on Burnt Hill, the ruin you saw just now. It hasn't changed much, except that there was a bit of roof to it then. They left their homes and made their way to the hill without any difficulty. After meeting, they planned to take the little path that followed the course of a stream until it reached the plains. After that, but who knows what they had planned, what dreams of the future they had conjured up? The storm broke soon after they'd reached the ruins. They took shelter under the dripping ceiling. It was a storm just like this one, a high wind and great torrents of rain and hail, and the lightning flitting about and crashing down almost every minute. They must have been soaked, huddled together in a corner of that crumbling building when lightning struck. No one knows at what time it happened. But next morning their charred bodies were found on the worn yellow stones of the old building. Miss Mackenzie stopped speaking, and I noticed that the thunder had grown distant, and the rain had lessened, but the chimney was still coughing and clearing its throat. That's true, every word of it, said Miss Mackenzie. But as to Burnt Hill being haunted, that's another matter. I have no experience of ghosts. Anyway, you need a fire to keep them out of the chimney, I said, getting up to go. I had my raincoat and umbrella, and my own cottage was not far away. Next morning, when I took the steep path up to Burnt Hill, the sky was clear, and though there was still a stiff wind, it was no longer menacing. An hour's climb brought me to the old ruin, now nothing but a heap of stones, as Miss Mackenzie had said. Part of a wall was left, and the corner of a fireplace. Grass and weeds had grown up through the floor, and primroses and wild saxifrage flowered amongst the rubble. Where had they sheltered, I wondered, as the wind tore at them and fire fell from the sky. I touched upon the cold stones, half expecting to find in them some traces of the warmth of human contact. I listened, waiting for some ancient echo, some returning wave of sound that would bring me nearer to the spirits of the dead lovers, but there was only the wind coughing in the lovely pines. I thought I heard voices in the wind, and perhaps I did. For isn't the wind the voice of the undying dead?